All right, hey, Tom Carnell here, Carnell Knowledge. Thought that I would come on this weekend. It's a beautiful day outside here in Bellingham, Washington, and I thought I was doing some thinking the last couple of days, and I thought to myself that I might do one of these special shows on the weekends to talk a little bit about specific items about records or books or movies. Same thing I do during the week show. If you don't know, I do a YouTube show here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, in which I detail five movies, a book, and then five records. The weekend shows are a little different. The plan there is to usually sort of drill down on something more specific. And that's what I got for you today. I did a search for a couple of things to try to find a topic, and one of the topics I came upon were live records, records that are recorded at a concert or at a venue. The more searching I did, I found out that most of them seem to happen during the 70s. Most of them were released during the 70s. And I found that really odd. So this show is going to be about the top 25 live rock records from the 1970s. I purposely left off, let me back up a minute. Released between 1970 and 1979. What I've done, the criteria for the show is that I've stacked them alphabetically and by years. So there's no preferential treatment. This isn't ranked or rated in any real order. And I purposely left off some of the ones that were always high on the list. But I'll be honest, I didn't care about things like FRAMPTON Comes Alive, the Kiss Alive records. I'm not a big band fan, so things like The Last Waltz, a great record, but I couldn't sort of gin up the interest enough to do any deep dives into it. And again, the mode of this show is usually things that are a little forgotten or a little under the surface. And those seem very sort of superficial to me. To give you a little bit of background, what I was doing between 1970 and 1979, I was 10 in 1970 and 19 in 1979. This marks my time through what was called then John Muir Junior High School, and then I went to Pioneer High in San Jose, California. Right after this, or right around the same time, I had gone out and gotten my first job at a Chuck E. Cheese, where I was Jasper T. Jowls in a lot of the early advertising. But I just gotten a job at the warehouse, and then the whole world of music was just kind of opening up to me. And so that sort of puts it in a little bit of a framework. And again, I'm going to go through these top 25. I'll give you some dates and a little bit of info I found, and you can compare your thoughts. If you have thoughts, please put them in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. And all right, let's get started. Number one, this is an interesting one. Released on July 6th, 1971. This kept coming up again and again, always in the top five, and always, a lot of times it was number one. And that is the Allman Brothers Band at Fillmore East. It features Diggy Betts on guitar. Duane Allman was still alive at the time of the recording of this. In fact, I read 3 months after this was released was when Duane Allman was in the motorcycle accident that took his life. This is, like, what can I tell you? This is a great record. Everything from Statesboro Blues to Midnight Rambler, Rider, whatever the hell it's called. But man, In Memory of Elizabeth Reed is such a great song that whenever I find myself going back to at Fillmore East, I always play In Memory of Elizabeth Reed first. It's just so great. They were a great band, and they after Duane died, they sort of came undone, and that happened to a lot of bands. A couple of which we're going to get to here in a second. Number two, again, 1971. This record was really big. I was a fledgling guitar player back at the time. Around this time, about 11, I had just picked up my first album, which was 10 years after A Space and Time. We're going to get to something about 10 years after in a minute. And then someone played for me Humble Pie's performance, Rockin' at the Fillmore. This was the last record with Peter Frampton. Steve Marriott is just killing it on this record. Everything from I Walk on Gilded Splitters to I Don't Need No Doctor. Man, if you've never heard this Humble Pie record, or you've never heard Humble Pie, this is a great place to start. I think this is a fantastic album, not to mention a live record. And let me do a sidebar here. I need to do a full disclosure on this before we get too far down this list. I'm not a huge fan of live albums. I think that they are inherently flawed because there isn't enough studio stuff to keep the performances just so. But I realize that they can be a great entry point for newbies and they're wanting to get into an artist. A live record is a great place to start. Compilation records are a great place to start. And they're a great way for a fan to fans of a band to see their full capabilities, to see what they would be if you went and saw them live and whether it would be worthwhile. So I get the live record thing, but I've just never been a fan. But so on with the list. So let's see, number 3. We're going to go skip ahead a couple years, 1973, Genesis Live. This was done. This was still Peter Gabriel was still in the band. It was supporting the release of Foxtrot. The album was recorded as a part of a thing. I don't know if they even still do it anymore, called the King Biscuit Flower Hour, where every week they would broadcast some show that they had recorded all over the world, and it was a great place to hear. I remember my local radio station used to play it every week, and it was fantastic. Even bands I didn't like, it was kind of fun to see them or to hear them. This is a great record. It sort of marks a demarcation. Gabriel had left shortly hereafter, but it was sort of documented in a live setting, what they called old Genesis. But it's got some great stuff on it. I'm a big fan of it, this record. But usually I'll be, again, if I want to hear some of the tracks that are on this, I'll just go back to the regular record. But as live records go, this one's a fantastic one. Also released in 1973, again, I had mentioned 10 years after recorded live. Alvin Lee was a big hero of mine, as I said. First time I heard I'm Going Home on Woodstock blew my mind. And this was a fine recording. It does, there's a lot of jams on it, which was sort of a thing back then in live performances. And Alvin Lee's a burner, man. The whole band was great. I mean, everyone, when you went to see 10 Years After, you went specifically to see Alvin Lee. And boy, that guy delivered on all fronts. He was a great frontman, he was a great guitar player, and he was a great band leader. Also from 1973, we're going to go with, this was coming, Yes songs. I grew up with a lot of people loving the band Yes, which consequently made me sort of go, I always say 50 million Elvis fans can't be right. You can't get that many people to agree on anything. But Yes, more as I get older, I find myself warming up to them. I had shunned things like Tales from Topographic Oceans for a long time, and part of a prog rock sort of top 50 thing I was looking into a couple months ago. I listened to it in its entirety, and it blew me away. Yes songs is the same way. It was supporting Fragile and Close to the Edge. It captured a time when the band was in transition. Bill Bruford was on his way out. He performed 2 songs that are on Yes songs, and Alan White was on his way in. He performed the rest of them, and it's a great set. It was the one record that when I thought, I think I'm going to listen to a Yes record, it was always Yes songs because it just seemed expedient. That's since changed. I'll now go to like Tales from Topographic Oceans or Belayer or something like that. But Yes Songs is great. Um, I don't know about that new single though. They just released a single, Aurora or something, from this new record, and boy, it just sounds like a Yes cover band. So anyway, Yes Songs absolutely deserves to be on here. Number 6, we're going ahead a year, 1974. David Live, David Bowie. It was recorded during the Diamond Dogs tour in Pennsylvania. Young Americans would come out the following year, and as Bowie sets go, this one's fantastic. The band is hot. The choice of songs are excellent, and yeah, I grew up, again, not being a huge Bowie fan. That happened later. I was lucky enough to see him on the Let's Dance tour in Oakland, where the Tubes opened for him, and it was a terrific show. Wally Badarou played on the band. I don't know that Stevie Ray Vaughan was there in the band, but anyway, big venue, so you couldn't see him for shit, but it was a fine show. And this David Live is a great record. Again, there's a lot of the early stuff on there, and the performances are great, and all rock solid. Also from 1974, we're going to go with Joni Mitchell, Miles of Isles. Took me a while as a kid to get into Joni Mitchell, but little by little, I've become a huge fan. I think her later stuff, all the Geffen records are the bomb. They're just excellent. This was done supporting Courtney Spark, and her backup band is just a monster. It's Tom Scott, Robin Ford, and the LA Express. Great stuff. The band plays with her on sides 1 and 4, and then it's just her solo 1, 2, and 3. And it's a fine representation of that era Joni Mitchell. I do think I was trying to keep it to within the 70s. So I do think that if you're stacking up Joni Mitchell live albums, I think Shadows and Light is better because the band is way better. It's like Jaco Pastorius and Pat Metheny, and it's a monster band. But Miles of Isles is great stuff too. She plays a lot of her earlier stuff. That's absolutely fantastic. Let's see, also in 1974, Mott the Hoople Live with Ariel Bender on guitar, who was the guitar player for things like Spooky Tooth and Steeler's Wheel. Great stuff. Again, it's a nice sort of companion piece to the David Live record. All the Young Dudes is on there. I think Walking with a Mountain is on there. And it's great. I got it back in the day. My mom was a member of the Columbia Record House. And it came as a part of that. And I immediately was like, oh, this is something completely different than what I'm used to. And little by little, I grew to really like that album. Also in 1974, we got a patch here from 1974. Triple album recorded in Japan, Santana Lotus. This thing was like the holy grail for a long time. You go to record stores and they were always out of it. No one had heard it. There was all this mysticism about it. And then later, again, it got a wider release and you could actually get your mitts on it. Michael Shreve, the great Michael Shreve, is on this. Tom Coster is on this playing keyboards. And it's a great set. If you're a Santana fan and you don't have Lotus, boy, you're missing out. And the packaging is beautiful. So there's that. I remember years later working at Tower that I would always see it in the stacks and I'd be like, I should buy that. But then something else shiny would happen and catch my eye, and I wouldn't. I've since rectified that, and yeah, I think it's a great record. 1974. This is a major milestone for me. Frank Zappa's Roxy and Elsewhere. This was Zappa after Mothers of Invention. It wasn't the 80s stuff where he had people like Steve Vai and Vinnie Colaiuta and all that kind of a thing. But the band here on Roxy was like Napoleon Murphy Brock, George Duke, Don Preston, Bruce Fowler, Ralph Humphreys, Chester Thompson, the great Ruth Underwood, who I think is an unsung genius and never really got the flowers she deserved. But One Size Fits All, a seminal record in my life, came a year later. And I was reading and doing research that there is supposedly a quadraphonic recording of this record mixed by Zappa somewhere in the vault. And it never got any kind of a release. And that's a goddamn shame. Roxy and Elsewhere is Zappa band of that era firing on all cylinders. It's great stuff. And it has Black Page Part 2. 1976. This one was going to probably surprise a couple of you. Jay Giles Band, Blow Your Face Out. Recorded in the band's hometown of Boston. It gives a pretty good idea what a powerhouse band Jay Giles was. They were something way before Centerfold and all of that other nonsense in the 80s. God, if you can find, I forget which record it's on, but Whammer Jammer is a blistering track. If you think the only thing about Jay Giles is all of that the later 80s stuff, go back and listen to Blow Your Face Out or some of the other stuff from the early one. Bloodshot is such a great record. It just never gets talked about, which is a damn shame. Let's see, 1976, same year, Rush, All the World's a Stage. This was really, for a lot of people, this was the first time they heard Rush, and the rest is history, as they say. It was released, so this came right after 2112 and right before A Farewell to Kings, and it was early Rush, firing on all cylinders. They hadn't gotten into the sort of the excesses of moving pictures and all of that kind of stuff. This was still them as a pretty raw power trio, but All the World's a Stage is a terrific record. Number 14, 1977, 1 year later. This may surprise some of you, but it's called Live and Let Live from 10cc. It was recorded during their Deceptive Bends tour. And I don't know what it is about 10cc, but aside from the schmaltzy, like I'm Not in Love and a couple of other things, Dreadlock Holiday, maybe, you don't hear people singing their praises. But man alive, there is some great stuff. I'm Mandy Fly Me is one of my favorite tunes of all time, and it's on here. And but it also shows how dynamic the band was. There's all this talk that on original soundtrack there's a song called One Night in Paris that supposedly inspired Freddie Mercury and Queen so much that they wrote Bohemian Rhapsody. So take that for what it's worth. But 10cc is a great band. I don't know why people don't, there aren't more hubbub around their catalog. But they were weird and purposely so. But, Sparks is getting their love. So I don't know why 10cc doesn't. Let's see, 1977, the same year. This thing, Bebop Deluxe, is a band, again, no one talks about. But Live in the Air Age is a great solo record. It was their fifth record. There's a deluxe version that you can get your mitts on. I know it's on Spotify. It's 15 discs, and it's almost 16 hours of recording. And it's multiple nights of a tour that they did. So there's a lot of repetition, Fair Exchange, I think, opens every single disc. But they're a great band. Bill Nelson, it was a great band. And they all just got kind of lumped into that same ball with like 10cc and bands of that era. Bebop Deluxe was known more for their covers, which were always eye-catching, than their music. But if you haven't gotten into Bebop Deluxe, take a chance on some of that stuff. And Live in the Air Age is a fine way to start. Again, if you go on Spotify, there's 16 hours of music there. And it's fantastic. It does get a little self-indulgent, but that's okay. It's a live record. That's what it's there for. Great stuff, all the way around, great stuff. Same year, 1977, number 16. It's our second look at Genesis. Seconds out, of course, you knew this was coming. First tour with Chester Thompson on drums from Zappa's band. And this is the band the moment when Hackett left. So the sets were recorded during the Wind and Weathering tour, with one track, Cinema Show, being recorded during the Trick at the Tail tour. Again, for that post Peter Gabriel stuff, this is a great record. And there's some great stuff. Is Los Angeles on there? I don't know. I think so. Maybe. But it's great stuff. Phil Collins is starting to feel his oats as far as being a leader goes. And it's great all the way around. Let's see, it's that same year, 1977, number 17, Rainbow on Stage, recorded during their German and Japan dates. Rainbow is another one of those bands that is just so good. I mean, it's Ronnie James Dio, and without Ronnie, you don't have Rainbow hitting as hard as it did. But when I was a kid, when I was like 17, which when this was, Rainbow was the coolest. I happened to see them at Winterland in San Francisco. They had a band called No Dice open. They were second on the bill, and REO Speedwagon headlined, and Rainbow was so much better. We were at Winterland. They had a balcony that went all the way around, and we were right behind where you could look over the rail, and you were right on top of Cozy Powell. And it was a great show. But On Stage is a fantastic representation of that. It does there's one side of the record is a version of Mistreated, and that goes a little long. That's okay. Number 18, a year later, 1978, David Bowie Stage. This was released right before Lodger, and it primarily has songs from Station to Station, Low, and Heroes, with 5 songs from Ziggy Stardust. This is Bowie at a time when he was like Bowie, you know what I mean? And everything I said about David live applies here, except for the song choices. It's good stuff all the way around, and yeah, it's Bowie. Number 19. 1978, Camel, a live record. Camel is a band that is a big fave of mine. This is a huge set. It's there's one whole side is the complete Snow Goose that performed with the London Symphony Orchestra, and yeah, if you like sort of symphonic prog, or just they're just a great band, and that's a great record. They would lose their way shortly after this, with things like Stationary Traveler and all the subsequent records as band members started to leave. But that core 4 were really something, and a live record definitely sort of documents that. Number 20, 1978, recorded during the Heavy Horses tour, Jethro Tull, Bursting Out. Tull was everywhere when I was a kid. I sort of got into certain records and fell out over certain records, but Bursting Out was a way that a lot of it all came together. And I happened to see them during the A tour at Oakland Coliseum, and they were fantastic. And funnily enough, the band that opened for them and everyone hated was Whitesnake. So there's that. Bursting Out has all the hits, and it's also got a couple of deep pulls that are very, very cool. Number 21, 1978, Kansas, 2 for the Show. This was released somewhere between Point of No Return and Monolith. Features an adaptation of Norman Rockwell's The Charwoman on the cover, and it's got the definitive version. And for me, one of the definitive songs for Kansas is Icarus Born on Wings of Steel. I saw they used that at a I See the Light show. Remember back in the day when you would go to planetariums, everyone would get stoned and you would sit in the chairs and look up, and they would play all this really cool rock music, and lights would flash and stuff, and it was was a hell of a time. It was a hell of a time. But Two for the Show is a great document when it comes to the Kansas discography. It was before the excesses of things like, Point of No Return and Dust in the Wind and all that. But Two for the Show has some great stuff in it. Let's see, number 22. And this record really hit hard. I was, at the time, 1978, I was taking guitar lessons from a guy named Jerry Garcia, who went on to play with Tower of Power. And speaking of Tower of Power, they were backup horns on this. It's Little Feat's Waiting for Columbus. They were on, so Tower of Power horn section was not only on this record, but they were also on a record called Feats Don't Fail Me Now. And Lowell George came from Mothers of Invention and Frank Zappa's band. And let's see, Mick Jones from the Rolling Stone plays on one song of this. And this is a powerhouse of like Southern rock, sort of boogie, Southern boogie, that kind of a thing. Lowell George would die as a result of a heart attack from an accidental heroin overdose a year later. So this always got cemented in my mind about, for that time. And it's a great set. If you don't know Little Feat, again, get on Little Feat. They're something. They're really something. Lowell George. There's a video on YouTube of him talking to some German guy and talking about how slide guitar and how he used a socket from a socket wrench instead of a glass slide or anything like that. But Little Feat, fantastic band, and Waiting for Columbus is a terrific document of not only that time, but also that band. 23, another record that really affected me as a kid, 1978, Thin Lizzy Live and Dangerous. It's the last record with Brian Robertson on guitar. It was released because they had sort of signed on a producer named Tommy Visconti to produce some new studio tracks. And his schedule was all messed up with a lot of different projects happening. So they were kind of like, well, we need to get a record out. And Visconti wasn't really, he was only had a week. So they decided they'd get together, remix a bunch of live tracks from a bunch of tours, and release it as Live and Dangerous. There's another live record that Thin Lizzy did later called Life that I also recommend, but it didn't happen in the 70s, so I had to exclude it. They're one of the greatest bands of all time. That's all I have, full stop. Phil Lynott affected me as a kid, not only because of how hard rocking the band was, but what a poet he was. And this record, Live and Dangerous, started a tradition how they would end one song and then begin the next song on the same note. So if it was the big power chord of the end of one tune, they would use that as the beginning power chord of the next song, and off they would go. It's good stuff. Yeah. Again, people will, you mentioned Thin Lizzy, and they go, oh yeah, the boys are back in town. But no. Cowboy song, Don't Believe a Word, Dancing in the Moonlight, all that stuff is just killer. Just killer. We're almost done here. Number 24. When I grew up, in the time we're talking about, I was living in the San Francisco Bay Area, and there was nothing bigger than the Tubes. And they have a record called What Do You Want from Live? It's a fine example of those guys. The only problem with this record is that the Tubes were kind of known primarily for their stage show. It was very theatrical, and Fee Waybill would come out in different personas, everything from Quaalude to the sort of over the hill kind of a rocker dude. They would do with Mondo Bondage, they had a guy come out in full gimp kind of regalia. They were such a visual band that to do a live record sort of stole some of that thunder. So, yeah. Still, it's got some great stuff on it. They do everything you expect from Mondo Bondage, What Do You Want from Live, Boy Crazy, and a couple of other things. Yeah, good stuff. Another band that people over the years have sort of set aside, and I don't think that's fair, because all they can think about is the completion backwards principle. So anyway, number 25. Oh, I have an extra one here. 25, Queen Live Killers. This was recorded on the European leg of their jazz tour. I had seen them about 2 or 3 times at this point in my life. And then Live Killers came out, and it was nice because it was kind of a lot of the same set that I had seen in the live performances that I had gone to at Oakland Coliseum. And a fine document, a great record, and it almost works better on the record, the Bohemian Rhapsody thing, than it did live. I remember the first time I saw them do that, and they cut to tape. It was like, what? But yeah, it was them. This is them kind of at the height of their 70s arena powers. Good stuff. And for some reason, maybe my numbering got wrong, but I have an extra one, so we'll go with this. 1979, UFO, Strangers in the Night. UFO is another band that was sort of omnipresent in my life in that time. This was the last record with Michael Schenker, and they would release Obsession, which was sort of, for me anyway, it was the beginning of the end. Strangers in the Night had a lot of the early stuff, which I loved, and the performances were fine. And I remember that big gatefold that was very, very cool. So there. Live records, what do you think? Did I miss any other than the aforementioned Frampton and Kiss and the band? If I did, my dog's calling. If I did, go ahead and say what your favorites are in the comments, and I'll let you know what I think. We'll be back to the regular show on Monday. So until then, everyone,